these clubs have different ambitions, no? And it's very important for the league to have very ambitious clubs because their growth equals our growth, and our growth equals their growth. So it's really a symbiotic relationship.
Football Friday on the first day of 2021. It couldn't have panned out any more perfectly than this. And we've got the man of the year in 2020 as our first guest, Chris.
Yeah, Happy New Year, Jing. Coco Torre, the first guest for 2021. I mean, he was the man of the year for 2020. So who better than to get the league commissioner on for our very first episode of the new year? Really fun episode, like great to get his own version and his own account of how things went down for last season's PFL 2020. We almost got him to divulge some groundbreaking news as to who the new teams are going to be next season, but you did your best, Jing, didn't you? But you didn't quite draw it out of him. But no, I mean, he's someone who normally is more working diligently in the background, but to hear him speak and give his own first-hand account was really great, and I'm sure the listeners, the viewers are really going to enjoy it.
We've got a great take on this year, also things to look forward to. There's a lot that's covered here on this show, and it's a great way to get to know Coco Torre himself. We hope you enjoyed, and if you do, please do subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. Please take some time to rate and review. We'd really appreciate it. It helps the algorithm put us out there to more football fans who might be interested in Philippine football. So please do rate and review. Don't forget. All right. And also, we'd appreciate if you guys send us a line on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram. We're all over social media. We'd appreciate hearing from each and every one of you. Without further ado, we've got Coco Torre on the first Football Friday of 2021. Happy New Year on this Football Friday, 2020 behind us, in front of us, a full year's worth of potential. And today, we've got a great guest to start things off in 2021. Chris, none other than the man who we crowned as the man of the year in 2020. We've got Coco Torre on the show today.
He's a very elusive character, is Mr. Torre. We've been trying to pin him down for a while. We've obviously talked a lot about the great work that he did this year on the most recent podcast that we did. And proclaimed him. We gave him the title. We adorned him with the Man of the Year award. And what a great opportunity to actually sit down and have a chat with him, Jing. So really excited for this one.
It's the first ever that we've crowned somebody the Man of the Year. It's a prestigious title, and you have a piece of history now, Coco. How does it feel to be on Across the Line? Welcome all the way from Bacolod City.
First and foremost, Happy New Year, Chris and Jing. And again, I know that I thanked you before for that very flattering award. So many people actually deserve credit for that award. And as I mentioned, Across the Line surely belongs to the category of unsung heroes in the year 2020, simply because you kept football alive, relevant, and a lot of conversation. It feels good to be here, Jing. As Chris mentioned, I'm quite the elusive one. Normally, I'm not the type to sit down in podcasts, but I do. It's my obligation actually to sit down with the media and talk during press conferences. So this is a first for me. So my only request is for you to take it easy. But other than that, it's really refreshing to see you both.
I don't know what kind of hard-hitting questions we've got here on this program for you, but we're going to try our best. All right. Chris, man, so much to talk to about with Coco here, but where do you want to start?
I guess I want to find out how it felt once you finally managed to conclude the 2020 season. I mean, obviously, there were probably moments where a lot of us didn't think the league campaign was going to go ahead. So for me, what was your sort of feelings once you managed to conclude the most recent 2020 PFL season?
When United City FC for the first time lifted the trophy, the PFL 2020, it was not actually only them celebrating, but Philippine football in general was celebrating with them. It was a very good sight to see. Some might say it's surreal. For me, it's quite surreal as well. If I look back on the months leading up to that very important night, it feels good. I felt very relieved at the same time to end the competition with no more COVID-19 infections. Everybody was healthy. They were very cooperative, and we ended the bubble with 0 infections after the initial one. So the next thought that I had in mind was, of course, what's up for next year? I mean, what's to happen? Considering that although the PFL 2020 has been concluded, COVID-19 is still there and it's ever evolving. I'm sure that you've heard it by the news, about these new mutations now. So it's a challenge on top of another challenge. But to conclude the PFL 2020 and how it was concluded, it was a great achievement, Chris.
Is that how you would describe it, Coco? Like, I mean, 2020 would be described in so many different ways by a lot of different people, depending on what your experience was. But if you were to describe your experience for what would be a memorable, historical year that will be remembered for many, many generations to come, like, how would you describe 2020 for you?
2020 was the year of the impossible for me, for Philippine football. I remember that. And I'm sure you're aware of this, the time when the biggest club in Philippine football actually decided to fold for unfortunate reasons, no? And in the headlines and in people's minds, they were saying that, could this be the end of Philippine football? So, and we don't really blame people for thinking that, because the league it's only down to 5 teams then, and everybody knows that you need a minimum of 6 clubs to play the league. So and all these questions, it's not only for the football industry, but also for life in general. Everyone was anxious. Anxiety is the fear of the unknown, and certainly people didn't really know how things would pan out, given that we were in unprecedented times. So actually, during March, I felt that, these are just things that would pass, just like other things, like when Taal volcano erupted. Everybody knew that, okay, in a couple of months, maybe, this catastrophe would eventually end. And I think this was the line of thinking of most, because like, we are so advanced. We are at a very advanced stage in our in our what do you call this, as humans, that we can just eventually just move over and continue with the next issue, get on with our lives. But when we heard that this might extend until June and July and then October, and then suddenly the news would tell you it might be 2 years, it was, actually got scared because this is something new. The emotion was fear and anxiety. And then, after you think about how your life will pan out, now you think about the football industry. Football in nature is a contact sport. Like, things such as going to a shopping mall, maybe buying groceries. I mean, there's a way around it. You can wear your mask and face shield, but what about football? There's no way you can actually, I was thinking about it, how maybe we can play football wearing a mask. Maybe we can play football wearing a face shield. I don't know if Chris would agree to that. But
we're like one of those, what they call their Zorbs, those big bubble things that they were all running around in before, like for jokes. I was at one point thinking the PFL was going to be playing those Zorbs.
Exactly. or do we deduce the football matches into just a crossbar challenge? Is it like a relay race where we proclaim a champion who's the fastest, more agile? Like, of course, you tend to dig into your creative minds and see how we can be competitive at the same time, you know, tiptoeing around this COVID-19. But of course, football is football, and 11 aside on a 105 by 68 pitch has to remain. That is the main essence of football. So actually, we were shed a bit of hope. Like we saw a beam of hope when the Games and Amusements Board actually approached us through the PFF. So they were saying that it's possible to resume professional sports this year. You just have to come up with your protocols, you know, in line with government directives and in coordination with the Department of Health. I think the good thing during that time, Chris and Jing, was the other countries were already playing football. So I think the countries who started it first was EPL, La Liga, the Bundesliga, and then in Asia we had the K-League. I think Vietnam for a time was really, you know, since their infections weren't that big, so they were still playing, and it sort of gave us hope and motivation to really make it work. The good thing also about it is that since football is a universal sport, so we share universal procedures in terms of match organization. So it's not really so different. Of course, in terms of infrastructure, you would argue that these countries are more advanced, and in terms of budget, you know, they have very deep pockets. But how do we now sort of translate this kind of procedures or protocols into our very own context in the Philippines? You know, in the Philippines, we were really lucky because like our league was just played in the National Capital Region, or you know, in Luzon. So we don't really, it wouldn't really hurt the league for us not to play home and away. So this is why we decided to have it centralized, and we were very lucky to have the PFF training center in Carmona, and we have full control of the pitch. The clubs, although it's quite far from Metro Manila, they were willing to travel just to resume practices. And then Kaya FC, they asked for what do you call this? The blue pitch to be considered as one of the training facilities, and thankfully Gab approved of it. So the teams were starting to train already, and this was a good thing. I remember seeing Jing before in the training venue, and you know, if you recall how we were stuck in our apartments, in our houses, and to see fellow colleagues to be in the match or training venue again was very refreshing. So we were very excited at that point. And then of course it was very difficult, not only for me as the organizer, but we also have to think about all the individuals. We talk about the teams, and in the teams you talk about the coaches, the players, you know, and people like Jing in the media side of football, Chris with you as, you know, a coach for the youth, you know, so like seeing players actually kicking the ball on a training pitch in this time of our lives, you know, amidst a pandemic, was really like a beam of hope.
Can I ask you a quick question? Sorry, Jing. Like, obviously, like that Gab, the moment that Gab came to the PFF and then announced to you that there was a possibility that you guys could put together a league, as long as the proper provisions were and precautions were taken, that seemed to be the sort of the watershed moment in this. But was there a point before that, as you alluded to before, like the likes of Ceres pulling out, where you thought, my gosh, we're not going to be able to have a season this year? Was there ever a moment where you just felt like it was the tide had turned too far and just having a 2020 PFL season wasn't potentially feasible?
Well, yeah, of course. After Ceres announced that they were not gonna continue, it sent shockwaves actually all over Philippine football, right? If you were like following it, but of course, we are in a position to like my job is to make to first come up with a league and make it successful. So we really try to find ways and means on how we can still continue the league with or without Ceres at that point. So the initial reaction was, of course, you need to look for clubs. Very lucky that actually during the lockdown, this was March, April, me and Anton Del Rosario were keeping close in touch because his Sevens League was affected and PFL was affected. So both of us were, like discussing and sort of like wondering what would be in store for us. So that gave me maybe a light bulb moment, and Anton as well. Anton, like if you talk to him anything about football, he's the guy to really to approach. So I asked him very simple question. I said, Ton, do you want to, put up a club in the PFL and compete? Because I told him, it's highly unlikely that you would be able to mount your Sevens League this year because number one, it's not a professional league, and number two, it involves kids as well. So he liked the idea, and just the day after our conversation, we were already like exchanging messages on how to go about it, like go through the paperwork. Immediately, we set meetings with our club licensing officers. He brought Choi on board with him as the general manager, and said and the other people who were, instrumental in putting up this Maharlika Football Club. So it was a good revelation. It added more hope to fielding this PFL 2020 season.
So after Anton, obviously there was also the situation with UCFC coming around, right? What did you play a part in that as well? Did you have to navigate that alongside with Ace and the new management?
Yeah, sorry, I missed out on that subject. So when Ceres Negros folded, there were talks that a foreign investor would take over Ceres, but at this time they didn't have a name yet. The good thing about it is that Eric Gottschalk, he's actually involved in the Philippine football scene ever since. So it wasn't really hard for him to sort of know the people who are in charge. It's a good thing that Ace and Gino were still there, and of course we would monitor the what do you call this? The progress of the transition between Ceres to United, and there came a point where we were just confident to assume that United City FC would be able to pull off the transfer. I think the management of Ceres made it very smooth and easy for them as well, and the players. Thanks to the leadership of, I guess, Shraki and Bienve, they agreed to stay in the team, and although they most of them are in different countries now, in Thailand playing, at least they stayed to play one more season to at least have United City FC remain intact for 2020.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, isn't it, Jing? Because I don't know if Coco meant to bring it up, but obviously we were one of the ones that had the conversation on our show, wasn't it, Jing? That we said, look, we don't know if this is going to be redeemable. I mean, the headline was, is this the end? And I remember Coco sending a message going like, what are we doing? You can't be putting those things out because it might sort of damage the reputation of the league. But it also was how we felt at the time. It just didn't seem to be anything to sort of latch onto. And I think it was important that we had that debate. And I think in the end, it did sort of spark a little bit of debate within our own sort of football community. But I mean, I felt that whole situation was handled extraordinarily well. I mean, the other one that I can think of, there's a multitude of different things that were very difficult to handle. But the other thing that I thought was quite well handled by you, that was a really delicate issue, was the whole thing surrounding another big club, which is the club formerly known as Global. I mean, that was another issue that arose that I was like, this just doesn't seem to be another thing that's going to potentially derail this season. So just from your perspective, how did you manage to deal with that particular issue? Because from the outside looking in, it looked really unsavory. And I thought it was something that you handled extremely well.
Yeah. Yeah, with regards to Global. So actually, Chris, it was a very easy decision, simply because we can determine what is right from wrong. So it was a very easy action moving forward. You know, players, you know, like professional players, they don't deserve to be not paid. The moment they train in the club, the moment they play for a match, it is the club's obligation to pay them back. So if a club doesn't pay them, then the club has no right to be part of the PFL. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, because I think that really sent a strong message to any other particular, any potential team that's looking to join the PFL in the future, that those standards need to be met. Because listen, we've been around the block with the domestic football scene, and there have been murmurs, there have been issues that have circulated around the league in previous years around the subject. And I think it is quite indicative. I think Southeast Asia in particular has that reputation of being, you know, sort of a little bit cutthroat with regards to players' contracts. And listen, I mean, we've seen it in other leagues, in Indonesia, in Thailand, in Vietnam, where these sorts of things have gone to, you know, the court arbitration of sport. And I think it really does tarnish the league. So I think, you know, when someone comes in with a strong hand and says, look, no, absolutely, we're not going to stand for this, I think it sends the right message, and it sets a precedence for other teams to make sure that they follow that in the future. And from a player's perspective as well, I think it gives them confidence to know that the governing body is going to be on their side should anything like this happen in the future, which I think is really, really important for the integrity of the league. So yeah, kudos for you for how you dealt with that. I thought that was handled particularly well, and it's something that I've been a strong advocate for, and wanted to see that for the longest time. I mean, as we sort of progress forward, and we're sort of moving towards the, you know, when we got into that bubble situation, like, how was that decision? How did you conclude that decision? Because obviously there was a number of different ways that other leagues had done it. You know, the Premier League had done it by testing, you know, twice a week. You know, the NBA had done a bubble scenario. Other competitions on the continent had done it different ways. What made you decide to go and do it in a bubble format? Like, what were some of the things that made you come to that conclusion?
Well, it was actually the directive of GAB that we proceed with a bubble format. Actually, we weren't really keen on doing a bubble format simply because it's expensive, number one. And then our players, they don't really, they're not really like full-time football players, some of them. They have 9-to-5s, or they have businesses at the side. You know how football is in the country. It's not enough to, you know, pay for everything. So that's the reason why we didn't want to be in a bubble. Also, we didn't want our season to be cut short. So we were planning for 90 matches. We were hoping to cut it to maybe 60 matches, minimum 30. And the way which we plan to combat COVID-19 was through testing first. We submitted the protocols, and it was actually denied. So they told us to come back to us with a bubble proposal, and there's a big chance that it will be approved. So we went back to the drawing board, and actually we borrowed some excerpts from the PBA. They were nice enough to share with us, because they're planning their bubble at that time. So when we passed back, submitted the protocols to GAB and then the DOH, so IATF approved it. So we were left with no other options but to proceed with the bubble. But this time we cut our matches to 15 only.
Then of
Yeah.
course the matches happened, and I think all across the board the resounding feeling was that it was a huge success. I mean, a lot of people enjoyed the product on TV. Now you've been around, not on TV, sorry, on their laptops and on their tablets, through the streaming services, but you've been around the game for the last decade or a little bit more. Um, how do you feel about what the feeling of the Philippine football community now, after this season? Do you feel as if there's a little bit of a buzz going on? What's your feeling of the pulse of the Philippine football community at the moment?
So there's a sense of uprising now for Philippine football. Actually, you can see it in the comments. You can see it when the fans talk on social media. Sometimes I chat with my friends, and they're normally not the ones to watch Philippine football, but then it reaches them, and they said that they viewed this match between Kaya and United, and I said, wow, it's nice that you're following the league, but what made the difference? He said, no, it's just more. She opens up YouTube, and you can, at the click of a button, just watch the games there. So I really believe that for you to grow the sport, you need to have a really good product. And by having quality matches streamed online, where people can, can just go to and enjoy, is a big step for growing the sport. And not only does it please the fans, but for the players also, a lot of them really congratulated the league, which I pass the credit to the broadcast team. I mean, they did a very good job. Sidelf, the team, you included, Jing, Nate, Natasha, who was Darren,
Yep. Jamer,
Paulo, who else? Yeah, and Direct Glenn, Iko. These guys really did a good job, and we're very happy. Of course, the product will still continue to evolve. So last season we had 5 cams, I think. So now we're looking into more like 7 cams, and higher angles, more angles, and more like a pre-game halftime show, all of that. So it's just going to continue to evolve. It's good that that the fans and the players and everyone in the football community is starting to appreciate it. It gives us more fuel in our passion to keep improving. And not only that, but it's well, I'll just share a little bit. But there are clubs already approaching PFL. They are wanting to join PFL
cat's out of the bag.
2021.
Cat's out of the bag. Okay, keep going, keep going.
Yeah. So over the break, I've been talking to 2 clubs. They want to join PFL 2021. So I said, I will make it not easy, but I will make sure that it's doable for you. So like with Maharlika FC, Anton and Choi and them, they really did a great job to join PFL 2020 on such a short decision. No, me and Anton, I think we spoke April, sometime around April, and lo and behold, they already competed this season. So we're actually having an expansion program in the PFL where we allow infant clubs to come in and grow within the league. I've discussed this with you and Chris. So it's a good program. A lot of it is tied into club education, and it's not like you come in as a big club and we expect you to have everything already. No, it shouldn't be that way. So it's more of a developmental approach. So whatever you want to be in the future as a club, you just make it as an objective. You don't have to achieve all of it now, but we make sure that you eventually achieve it through
Can I
like
just jump in there,
objective.
Coco? Can I just ask you a quick question? Because one of the issues that I experienced with a lot of clubs was when it was under the PFL guys, when it first came in, there was so many restrictions and compliance issues that a lot of clubs needed to adhere to, that they either, try to find a loophole in, like, for example, like we're having a formal academy, for example, like not many clubs did. So they would just try to manufacture it and it wasn't actually real. Or they would try to find a loophole, and so it wasn't ever really properly adhered to as you would in the manual. Do you know what I mean? But under the provisions the AFC had mandated. So you have mentioned it to Jing and I, but just for the listeners and the viewers, what are some of the things that are flexible, or what are some of the things that some of the clubs have said, look, we're not going to be able to potentially have like a full-blown academy, for example, but maybe we can do some grassroots initiatives that might offset that. Like what are some of the concessions that you've had to make to enable some of these current clubs like Mahala could participate, and what some of the future clubs might be afforded also?
Sure. So basically, if you enter the league, PFL, there's something we call the club licensing regulations. And in that regulations is a long list of things that you have to tick. There are criteria which are graded A, meaning you must have it, B, like best effort, and C, it's when you can, So we sort of kind of adjusted the regulations to tailor fit it to the status of most of the clubs in the Philippines. So one of which are non-negotiable is having a squad, no, and having an A coach, a B for an assistant coach. So those are non-negotiable because it really affects how the club participates on the pitch. And then for example, the infrastructure, we can't really assume that all the clubs they own stadiums, no? So it could be a simple MOU with a stadium and say that every time we have a match and we're hosting, that we are capable of hosting in this venue, And for example, the youth academy, I know right now that it's tough because if you're a new club, you can't just assemble a youth academy at this point. So we make it as an objective for them, because when you enter as a club in the PFL, you shouldn't just treat yourself as a team. You need to have like a long-term vision also, and this is what the league provides to the club. We want you to realize, or we want you to look at your end goal as well. What is your objective of joining the league? Because in the league, we have guest teams, but preferably we have professional clubs, and clubs by definition have youth academies. So we need to share our vision as well. But at the same time, we don't ask for it right away, meaning that you should have an academy right now. We can maybe plan for it that we plan to have an academy in 3 years time. So in 2 years time, in 1 year time, this is our roadmap on how to achieve it. So it's something like that, Chris. My analogy of it is I liken it to like buying a car. Like if I need a car, I want a car, and to buy a car, I can't afford the entire, let's say 1.2 million now, but I can do it installments because the objective is, I pay all the dues and eventually own the car. So it's kind of the same concept with the club. And it's very important, although we sort of adjusted the licensing regulations, it doesn't mean that you can just be forever a team in the PFL and not have your own vision or grow your club. Otherwise, you would just be like a sort of a warm body there in the competition. Our objective really with the PFL is to cultivate a football communities through clubs. So this entails the youth academies and the community outreaches and all of that, which we will eventually achieve, if after this pandemic, hopefully.
Yeah, and obviously that ties into what we've been harping on about for so long, Jing, which is about the sustainability element. I mean, I look at, there's obviously been a number of clubs that have been, one and done, because obviously to get the finances together to, I look at like for a Locos, for example, like obviously it's a shame that they only did one season, but obviously the cost of everything was so exorbitant that they weren't able to sustain that. And that's a shame, because I think had they given the time and the opportunity, that I think they could have been a pretty good club on the domestic scene. So, I think if teams are going to be sustainable and they have got all of those foundations in place, like you said, it just fosters a more harmonious football community that everyone can get on board with. And then those kids who are part of a team, they can then go and watch their elders playing in the competition. That's something that I think we had back in the UFL days. There was that strong connection with the clubs, and then had the affinity with those men's team, and that's what had that sort of vibe. And I know you both you and Jing were involved with that, but it's something, Jing, that we've been speaking about since day one, isn't it? About that sort of sustainability element and having that sense of community amongst all of the football players, fans, all together, just enjoying the festival of football, really.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Coco, sorry, because the sustainability aspect, as Chris mentioned, is the big question mark now, right? There's going to be 8 next year, but will those 8 remain over the course of the next 5 years, right? And we just continue to grow the roster, because if teams keep dropping out, then we're never going to have that full-fledged 20-team league that we're probably dreaming of in a decade's time, right?
Yeah. So the one thing we have is the benefit of hindsight. We've seen how UFL flourished with with how they ran things, and we've seen how PFL sort of professionalized the dealings in the professional football club scene, and we can always marry the best of both practices, between the competitions. Our thrust now really is growth, and when you want to grow something, you really don't want to blow things out of proportion. So I think growth entails sustainability and viability, and so these are the things that we need to understand. I think one indicator of our successes for growth would be more clubs, and if there's less clubs, then it means that we are not successful that season, because some things simply did not work, with our objective towards growth. We do have a midterm plan, so we plan to grow the league through addition of clubs every year. So ideally, it's always 2 clubs per year. And then eventually we put a cap until such time that we hit 16 clubs. Then we start a second division. So we have to treat also the clubs at a case-to-case basis. Like, for example, Mendiola started 2 years ago versus Maharlika started this year. No? So they are at a different status in their existence in the PFL. No? So you have to treat it separately. And also with Kaya. Kaya cannot be compared to a Mendiola or Maharlika with its club organization and its development. It has to be different. So that's why we came up with, we are planning to come up with like several status of licenses, like a gold standard, a silver standard, and maybe a bronze standard to really categorize the clubs and see what they're capable of doing, to see whether they are ripe enough to take it to another level, and eventually, because the main objective of some clubs is to reach the AFC Champions League, like for example with Kaya, with United, maybe with Stallion. But some clubs, they're not really in it for the international competition. They're in it for the domestic development of football, through their players. So maybe like the likes of Mendiola now and the Maharlika, eventually they will reach that standard wherein they can host an AFC Champions League, they can compete in it, and whatnot. And then eventually Maharlika will climb the ladder when, like for example, next year they climb up the ladder already, and the two new entrants, they come in as infant clubs, and we assess them every year on whether they're ready to progress, or the keys for improvements, and all of it has to do with club education, really. There are a lot of stories with clubs abroad, especially in Japan, in J2, where these infant clubs can pick out from best practices and what do you call this, objectives, which they can not they can pattern their trajectory for growth. So as the league, we are actually planning to have a workshop or modules for this club education, and hopefully it sets them on the correct path, and a lot of clubs who are existing now would follow to join in the PFL.
So just to be clear, the two clubs that you mentioned are infant clubs. They're not returning clubs. They're infant clubs.
Which ones?
The two.
Oh no, these would be well, the one club has had UFL experience.
UFL experience.
No, they have not. Well, the people in there were part of a management of a UFL team, but it's a different team. But this one had UFL experience. So
you almost got him there. He did so well to avoid that, giving that away. He did a good job. Good try. I fully appreciate the effort.
Run with it, guys. Whatever details he just gave out, try to figure it out. Let us know who you guys think Coco is pertaining to for next season. But going along the trend of sustainability, I think the big question mark over the last few years, especially in the start of the PFL, was the home and away format was a huge drain financially for a lot of people, especially for the big clubs, if you're flying to Davao and all of that. Are we sticking with a more centralized format for the coming year? And if so, how does that play into the mandate also to harbor communities or to grow communities? Because if you can't physically play there, then it becomes a little bit difficult.
Yeah. So if you remember, Jing, was it last year? Yeah. So it was more of a centralized format in a sense that the clubs all sat down and said, hey, we can't afford to go to Bacolod or Iloilo or and other areas. So we're comfortable, playing here in Manila. So we did understand. So this is the reason why it was played in Lipa, Batangas, and Carmona, and where else? I think, and Binyan. Yeah. I think the reason was because Rizal was under renovation for the SEA Games.
That's right.
UMAC as well. I think that their grandstand is they can't accommodate.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why it was played there. And this 2020, it's a centralized, so meaning it's the league who took over and organized this. And this is something that I'm looking to propose moving forward for maybe the first 3 years after 2020. So maybe until 2023. The reason behind, Jing, is that I really believe that football should be a business, and when you host, it shouldn't be. When you host in your community, it shouldn't be seen as an expense. It should be seen as an opportunity, because once you host a football event, imagine all the things that you can make possible. You have for a day real estate where you can invite your fans to support your team, invite vendors, your merchandising. It's endless possibilities. So this is part of the education for which the clubs need to understand, that it's not something that is a burden for you to host. It's an opportunity. It's like U2 coming to the Philippines. It's like Coldplay coming to the Philippines. It has to be like this thinking. Can you imagine if Like for example, the national team, Philippines, Suzuki Cup, we qualified for the let's say semifinals, and like we did during Chris's time. We failed to host in the Philippines because we didn't have the infrastructure to accommodate it. So the fans felt that we missed a really big opportunity here. So it's the same thinking. If you as a club build your fan base or your community big enough for you to say that, hey, every time we have a home game and we bring it to Iloilo, it's going to be big. Fans are going to be excited. It should be the other way around thinking, rather than, oh, it's going to be an expense out of our pockets and we're not going to get anything out of it. So that's one thing. But like for example, in last year, although we played in Manila, when Kaya asked if some teams can play in Iloilo, and I think Air Force was the ones who said, okay, we can ride our C-130s and go to Iloilo. So we made it happen, actually. And props to Kaya. You guys really did a good job in organizing the competition there. But like I think most of the Air Force players were from Barotac, no, or Iloilo. So it was an even share of fans in the stadium. And man, the game of how Air Force played in that stadium, they almost beat Kaya. I think the scoreline was 3-4 or something.
If
close. Not for if not one for I think the referee caught a foul inside the box or something. It would have been a draw 4-4 or something.
Yeah,
no?
Something like that. Yeah, exactly. But when there's fans, man, right? Like when your family and friends come out, the people that that you grew up with come out to watch you play. It's different.
Yeah, it's different, really.
Yeah.
And the excitement is different, and you just make a culture out of that. And in no time, maybe 2 to 3 years, you'll be able to pack the stands, diba? So I just wanted to share this learning experience I had in Japan. Are you familiar with this club where their A boards are like 3 folds? Behind the goal they have A boards, and then they have another level of A boards and another one, and in the touch line same. So this club in Japan is now in J2. If you go to their matches, you would see mostly kids and elder people, and these elder people would be accommodated by their children. So meaning these are the ages 30 to 40, and so these mid-aged people would have to bring their kids as well to enjoy. So the whole family is there in the stadium. But before, it wasn't like that. They didn't have sponsors. They weren't winning games. They didn't have money, and they didn't have fans. So out of that 4, they said we need to reach our objective. So out of the 4, which should we focus on for us to be able to make our club better? So you know what? They decided, although we're not winning, we don't have money, let's be the people's club. Let's have the community love us. And they did it by holding free free clinics for the children. Every Saturday mornings, they went to schools and teach the kids how to eat properly, exercise properly. The elderly people, they took care of them. Some of them, they bathed them. They asked them to read them stories. So obviously, when you come up with this connection with this team, you would feel like obligated to support them during their matches, no? So in one match, they packed the stadiums. And of course, as a player, it's nice to see that a lot of people are cheering for you. And as a player, he shared that he knew most of the people in the stands. Oh, this is the guy I read a story to. These are the kids who I taught how to pass properly, so it becomes a community. And when the sponsors saw that the stadium was packed, they invested money. They said that this team is loved by the community. If my brand is attached to that, then of course, through affiliation, people would support my brand as well, and I would have, all this exposure. So when the sponsors came, and the sponsorship, they told me, wasn't like a huge chunk of money. It's more of like tiny coffee shops, laundries, and other small restaurants would sponsor the club. So the club had money now. When the club had money, they started to invest in players, really good players. When they bought a very good striker, defender, and the keeper, they started to win games now. So it's now evolving, and eventually from J2 they reached all the way to J1. So these are just like examples of success stories of clubs who started from small, but they just really focused on the important things, and eventually they climbed greater heights.
So Coco, I mean, as much as I'd love to see Jing bathe the elderly, I'm guessing that there's only so much that either the clubs or the league or that the federation can do. So do you think that sort of scenario there, is that a sort of a mandate you're going to give to the clubs, or is that something that the league will try to do as a league and then hope that the clubs benefit from that, or is that something that maybe is a directive from the PFF and then it's their responsibility to get involved with the game as a community? Like, whose responsibility then whose shoulders should that be on then to try to cultivate that community?
Sure. Well, I can only speak in behalf of the league, since the federation has their own initiatives. So as the league, when you talk about the league is only under our leadership. It's only under our governance. But really, who is the league? That's the question. For me, the league is consisted by the clubs and consisted by the players under the clubs. I think that is our football umbrella in the league. The league is just a platform where the clubs go to compete, no? And we organize it properly. We make sure that there is good exposure to the league, so that in turn, a lot of support will go to the clubs as well. But for me, aside from the competition aspect of things, the clubs really play a vital role, as they are the ones really forming the league. The league, as a league, we can provide the leadership, we can set the direction, we can sort of pave way for growth and for what do you call this? Basically we pave the way for growth. But the real stakeholders here really are, for me, the clubs. So the clubs, some of them, they are already in the right direction, like clubs like Kaya, who have youth academies, Stallion, Mendiola is planning to have, and Maharlika, they're very aggressive with their connection to Manila. Who else am I missing? Well, ADT is a team, but they also have other plans to come up with their own community.
United City.
United City. Wow, United City has very big plans. They're looking at their field of dreams. They're looking for a stadium where they can build and make it as their home. So these clubs have different ambitions, no? And it's very important for the league to have very ambitious clubs, because their growth equals our growth, and our growth equals their growth. So it's really a symbiotic relationship. To go back to your question, Chris, on whether it's the responsibility of the clubs and the league, I think it's a shared responsibility, in a sense that we as PFL allow them to grow, and them as clubs have to have their objectives, and it's not only inside the pitch, it's also outside the pitch. For PFL side, we do have our own CSR. We also reach out to the community, but in the end of the day, when you're a football fan, as much as you support the league itself, you also need to pick a side. So it's also the club's responsibility on why a football fan should choose them. So that's my thoughts on that.
All right, pretty exciting stuff. I mean, 8 clubs for next year. A mandate that the clubs will watch and look how the PFL hosts events properly for the next 3 years. At least that's what you're telling us. So the clubs are going to pick
That's
up
the
and learn.
proposal.
They're going to
Just the
learn from the
proposal,
PFL.
Jing. Yeah.
And no better man to learn from than a guy who's actually, maybe perhaps people don't know this, but you've been traveling around, going to a lot of workshops, a lot of seminars. You've gone through a lot of courses as a representative of the PFF or of this country. And you've picked up a lot of tricks of the trade along the way, right? You want to touch up a little bit about your background on football administration and else and other things that you've dabbled in?
Sure. Where do you want me to start?
Okay, so you've got football administration. That was the most recent course that you do?
Yeah, it's a certificate program. It's actually a what do you call this? It's more of an all-around kind of thing, like a short MBA for football. So it touches from marketing, finance, crisis management, match organization. What else do you have? And basically like income generation and stuff like that. It's a lot of things in a short period. So it was 6 months, and
Wow.
we did it in Malaysia. We went there for four times, but all in total 6 months.
And then you're also what, media officer, accredited, match commissioner. Ano ba? Is it general coordinator also? What else?
Okay, let's do chronology. So in UFL, I was marketing manager, and then PFF, I was media officer for AFF and AFC and PFF competition. In PFF, and then general coordinator for AFF competitions. Then I was a VAR coordinator for AFC, and then I took the match commissioners workshop in Cambodia, and then the football administrative course in Malaysia. Then I was operations manager in Abu Dhabi for the AFC Asian Cup. What else? And then for PFL, I was competitions manager, and then now I'm the league commissioner. Yeah.
Incredible. It's an incredible journey, man. It's quite a journey as a football man. Did you foresee this when you started off in the UFL?
Well, not really, Jing. It was 2009. I just graduated, and I didn't really have much in front of me. I had a bank job, a management like program waiting for me in a bank, but I wasn't really sure if I wanted to go that route. So the Football Alliance, very passionate group of people, took me in as the marketing manager, and that's where I met you, Jing. Yeah. And man, like growing up in this industry with you has been amazing. I've learned a lot of things from you. I think you're brilliant, and you shared with me a lot of ideas. Chris, at that time, I mean, until now, I looked up to you, Chris. That game you had is phenomenal. Jing, I don't know if Chris knew about what we were doing in Nomads during the time they beat Vietnam, but to me, it's still fresh. how we were watching it, where we went after, who celebrated with us. I think that was a UFL match between, I think, a Sunken Garden and an Armed Forces team, where we celebrated. Yeah, where we celebrated when the first goal was scored, and the players stopped the game actually and watched the replay. Man, that was an amazing time. Yeah, but for PFF, my first role was actually a guy who played the national anthem. You know, when they're about to march in, that was my first role in PFF, to play the national anthem. And then I was what do you call this? Promoted to a venue announcer. So for for a while, I was venue announcer, and yeah, and then things just went from there.
So all of these things, all of these years spent in football, would you still consider yourself more of an artist and painter or a football man?
Jing, I haven't lifted the paintbrush and a pencil in 2 years already since I was appointed.
Wow.
So maybe later on when I retire, I can pick up the paintbrush again.
Been that long, huh? I have a piece of your work here at my house that I still put up
Habitat, yeah.
and display. That's right. Yeah. So, um, no more galleries, huh? No more exhibits, rather, that you've put up. When was the last one?
The last one was actually here in Bacolod. So it was
Oh,
Sugarcane Diaries. And then I have some private collectors. They message me and I paint for them, and it's more of a commission based thing. So when I have time. So it's been 2 years, Jing. It's been 2 years since I've I've lifted the brush. I've been on my keyboard for a long time now and on the pitch, but I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining. So far, this journey working for Philippine football has been an honor. Actually, it feels good to be in a position where you can, serve Philippine football, and it also feels good to be surrounded with like-minded people like you, like Chris, and all, a lot of supporters in the community. When I stepped in as the commissioner, I've been getting a lot of private messages. A lot of people seem to slide me DMs, congratulating me, unsolicited advice, But I don't mind it. It's fun. It keeps you going.
man, it's been incredible watching the journey. You go through all the things that you've gone through, and then to wind up here now on a cusp of something very, very exciting. Um, it feels fresh to be in Philippine football again. Like you're wondering what's around the corner rather than dreading what could be around the corner. Congratulations again. It's been tremendous, and it's been really enjoyable being along the journey with you on this. Chris?
No, I totally agree with you, Jing, echoing his sentiments. I think if you look back to earlier this year, it was such a dark cloud that was hanging over the domestic game, and fortunately you didn't have enough time to paint or draw, because you were busy concocting your master plan. And I think from the outside looking in, although we were very worried as to how things were going to transpire, I think in the end we were greeted with a wonderful product, and a tournament that we all really enjoyed. And exactly what Jing said, I think is palpable now, that sort of feeling of excitement for what's to come in the domestic game. So hopefully that this is just a sample of things of things to come. And exactly what Jing said, it's more excitement and not a panic as to what's around the corner, but more really looking forward to, seeing the potential that's in front of us and hopefully seeing that come to fruition. So, no, we really appreciate you coming on and just giving your version of events and your own accounts of how things went this year. And we're really looking forward to seeing how things develop in next season and in seasons beyond that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris and Jing.
If you
Or should I
Go ahead.
do I have a
Sorry, Cole?
am I supposed to do an ending or something, or
No,
You do whatever you want, mate. It's your show.
not obligated to do anything. I was just gonna cap off that if you guys are interested in Inasal, Coco Torre is also a man of Inasal these days. So he's a busy man. Maybe that's the reason why he has been picking up a paintbrush recently. Too busy creating a league and keeping people fresh with the fresh taste of Bacolod here in Mandaluyong, actually, where it's from. So check it out at Coco Torre. It's falling apart for you over there, but we appreciate you coming on again. It's been tremendous. And is there somewhere that people can go to follow you and perhaps get updated on things with the league, or Maybe your art, maybe your NSL. Where do they go?
For football, you can follow We Are PFL in Instagram and the Philippines Football League in Facebook. And of course, we have the 6 clubs. We will be sharing on how you can follow them. For for Inasal, we are JT's Pioneer in Instagram and Facebook. And for my personal, you don't really have to follow me. Just follow the two and I'll be very happy.
A man of the people. All right. We appreciate you, Coco Torre, the man of the year for 2020. It's 2021 now. We've got a fresh start. We've got an entire year to look ahead to. And we look forward to it with plenty of excitement. Thank you for joining us on this Football Friday here on Across the Line. If you enjoyed this conversation, please do subscribe to our YouTube, Spotify, and on Apple Podcast. Drop us a line on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram. Who do you think are those 2 new clubs? Who are these familiar faces that might be on their way back into the world of the top flight of Philippine football? We'd appreciate your thoughts on it. Send us a line. And that is it for us on this Football Friday. We'll catch you next week.